Right now, 30,000 homes in Japan have no power, over 41,000 travelers are stranded with nowhere to go, and somewhere on a small island in the Pacific, a family is sitting in the dark, listening to winds strong enough to rip a roof clean off a house, praying the water outside their door does not rise any higher. This is not a movie. This is happening today, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly how this storm system nobody was talking about 1 week ago turned into one of the most disruptive typhoons Japan has faced this year. This storm is still moving, still causing damage right now as you are watching this. Let's rewind exactly 1 week. Nobody was watching this storm. Nobody was worried. On August 19th, in the middle of nowhere, near a tiny cluster of islands called the Chuuk Islands, meteorologists spotted a weak, barely organized tropical depression. It was slow, it was lazy, it was almost sitting still in the ocean, doing nothing. Japan's weather agency gave it a name anyway. They called it SAUDEL. At that moment, it had winds of just 35 knots. That is weaker than some summer thunderstorms. If you had seen the numbers that day, you would have shrugged and moved on with your life. Nobody could have predicted what was coming next. But here is the problem with storms like this. The quiet ones are sometimes the most dangerous because while everyone else looks away, they are quietly feeding. Warm ocean water, low wind shear, the perfect conditions to grow and grow fast. And that is exactly what SAUDEL did. Within just 48 hours, forecasters were already sounding the alarm, warning that this storm would explode into what they call a strong typhoon by August 21st. And they were not done. They warned it would keep climbing, becoming what meteorologists call a very strong typhoon by August 23rd as it barreled toward the Okinawa Islands. In under a week, a storm that could barely move had transformed into a system throwing gale-force winds more than 300 kilometers out from its center. Think about that. 300 kilometers. That is the distance from one end of an entire country to the other. And that was just how far this storm's outer winds reached before it had even hit its peak. At this point, this storm had officially earned itself multiple names because that is how seriously the world was taking it. The Japan Meteorological Agency called it SAUDEL. The United States Joint Typhoon Warning Center tracked it as 17W. The Philippines, watching from a distance, called it OBET. 3 names, 1 storm, and 1 destination. Japan's southernmost prefecture, Okinawa, home to more than 1 million people, packed with beaches, resorts, tourists, and critically, more than half of every single American service member stationed anywhere in Japan. Now, by Tuesday, August 25th, SAUDEL positioned itself just 50 kilometers from Minami Daito Island. Its central pressure had crashed down to 950 hectopascals. And its winds hit 234 kilometers per hour. That is strong enough to snap power poles in half, to send roofing sheets flying through the air like blades, to turn an ordinary bicycle left outside into a deadly projectile. And this storm was not slowing down. It was heading straight for Okinawa Island and straight for the Amami Islands, and the warning from Japan's meteorological agency was blunt and urgent. Stay inside, stay alert, because the danger is not just wind, it is landslides, it is storm surge, it is waves capable of swallowing a person whole. At Kadena Air Base, one of the largest and most important American military bases anywhere in the Pacific, the response was immediate and serious. The base was placed under a caution-level readiness condition, the kind reserved for when damaging winds of 40 miles per hour or stronger are already tearing through the area. Shops closed. Movement was restricted. Thousands of American service members and their families were told in no uncertain terms, get inside and stay there. And then it hit. Through Tuesday night into the early hours of Wednesday morning, Okinawa braced itself. At 3 in the morning, the storm center was just 71 miles from Kadena Air Base. Sustained winds were still howling at 90 miles per hour. Gusts were tearing through at 115 miles per hour. By Wednesday morning, there was one small piece of relief. SAUDEL had weakened slightly, downgraded to what is called a Category 1 equivalent typhoon. Its track kept the very center of the storm just north of Okinawa's main island, sparing the most crowded areas from an absolute direct hit. But do not mistake a downgrade for safety. Tropical storm force winds were still ripping across the northern half of the island. The all clear had not been given, and people were still at that very moment trapped indoors waiting. A 78-year-old woman in the city of Aruma stepped outside near her home, and in an instant, a violent gust of wind swept her off her feet. She fell and she suffered a head injury. Think about how fast that happened. On the nearby island of Amami Islands, a woman in her 70s was inside her own home when the power suddenly cut out in the middle of the storm. In the darkness, she lost her footing on a staircase and fell. Officials are calling both injuries minor, and so far there are no reported deaths, which genuinely is good news. But here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. Storms like this do not always reveal their full damage right away. Sometimes it takes days for emergency crews to even reach the most remote and battered communities, and when they do, the numbers do not always stay the same. Now let's talk about the chaos this storm unleashed on travel, because this is where the scale of this disaster becomes impossible to ignore. Japan's two biggest airlines, ANA and Japan Airlines, were forced to cancel 279 flights combined. 279 flights combined. That decision alone stranded, delayed, or disrupted the plans of 41,688 people. 41,000 people in the final days of Japan's biggest summer travel season suddenly stuck. No flights out, no flights in. ANA grounded every single flight to and from Naha Airport for the entire day on Wednesday. And as the storm's outer bands actually swept across the region, it got worse. Roughly 150 more flights were canceled in real time. Ferries were suspended too, cutting off yet another lifeline for people trying to move between islands or simply get home. And this was not contained to Japan. Across the water in Taiwan, flights between Taiyuan and Okinawa were disrupted as well. Taiwanese weather officials confirmed that even a weakened SAUDEL is still expected to bring its closest and heaviest impact there late Thursday into Friday, with dangerous rainfall forecast for the north, the south, and the mountainous central regions. This storm crossed borders, it disrupted entire countries, and it is still moving. Now, more than 30,000 homes across Kagoshima Prefecture, the region that includes the Amami Islands, lost power completely. No lights, no air conditioning in the middle of a brutal, humid Japanese summer, no way to charge a phone to call for help or check the news. That is the reality for 30,000 households right now as this video plays. And the rain. Let's talk about the rain, because this might be the most dangerous part of this entire story, more dangerous than the wind itself. In just 24 hours, the Amami region was hit with more than 23 centimeters of rainfall. That is 9 full inches of water falling from the sky in a single day. And the forecast says it is not finished. Meteorologists are predicting up to 10 more centimeters could fall on Amami, and up to 12 more centimeters, nearly 5 inches, could hit Okinawa, all before midday Thursday. When you combine ferocious wind with rainfall totals like that, you get the exact recipe for flash floods in low-lying neighborhoods and landslides on the steep, saturated hillsides that cover much of this region. And here is the terrifying truth about landslides. They do not always happen during the storm. Sometimes the ground holds just long enough to give people a false sense of safety and then gives way hours or even a full day after the skies have already cleared. That is exactly why officials are refusing to relax their warnings even now. This situation escalated all the way to the very top of Japan's government. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi personally addressed the public, urging every single citizen in the storm's path to watch the forecasts closely and follow every evacuation order without hesitation. And think about who this storm actually hit. Okinawa is not just any region. It is one of Japan's most beloved travel destinations, pulling in more than 10 million visitors every single year, drawn by turquoise water, white sand beaches, and a culture unlike anywhere else in the country. For countless families, this was supposed to be the trip of the summer. Instead, it became hours of canceled flights, shuttered hotels, and huddling indoors, listening to the wind claw at the windows. So where is SAUDEL right now at this exact moment? As of late Wednesday morning, the storm sits about 180 kilometers northwest of Okinawa Island, still packing winds up to 144 kilometers per hour, close to 90 miles per hour, still a legitimate typhoon, now pushing westward across the East China Sea, aimed directly at the coast of mainland China. Forecasters tracking the storm say persistent dry air is being pulled into its circulation, which should keep weakening it, but weakening does not mean harmless. Wave heights near the storm's core have been recorded at an astonishing 13.7 meters, 45 feet. Waves tall enough to swallow small boats whole, still crashing along its path as it moves on. Here is the good news, and it is real good news, because SAUDEL's center passed just north of Okinawa's main island instead of striking it head-on. This region avoided the absolute worst-case scenario, the kind of direct hit that has devastated these islands in past decades. No deaths, only minor injuries. This storm is now racing toward China and after that toward Taiwan, where it will bring its own fresh wave of danger later this week. We are going to keep watching this one closely, and the moment new numbers come in, the moment anything changes, you are going to hear it here first. So if this story mattered to you, if you want to know the second this situation develops further, make sure you are subscribed because storms like this do not wait and neither should you. Stay alert, stay safe, and we will see you in the next update.